Today we're speaking with high school graduate Joseph Brooks. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Joseph Brooks. As I was introduced, I graduated James Madison through the online program in, I think, March of 2023. And yeah,
Awesome. Well, as many people know, we reached out to do our annual Graduate of the Year contest,
Mhm.
and I'm honored to announce you are one of our finalists.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes,
oh my God! I thought,
congratulations.
wow, I've never done anything like this, so
Uh,
that's pretty cool.
Well, you had a really compelling and interesting story. You talked about your mental health, about your experience as a military child, and wanting to learn more about your heritage. And we were just all really impressed with your submission and really moved by it and felt like you had a really great, important story to tell. So, first off, thank you for applying and thank you for agreeing to do this. So did any of the moving have anything to do with you choosing an online education, or was it the choice to go to James Madison something kind of independent?
I don't really have the ability to kind of because I can do the work. It's just being in the classroom for those long hours. It's like, I don't need this. I can
Mhm.
kind of do everything I need to do on my own if I just get my own pacing. So that's why James Madison appealed to me. The friend that I was living with, actually, his sister had done a similar thing. Actually, the same thing. Oh, I said similar, but she did the same exact program. I'm not sure if she ended up graduating or not, but so my friend's mom had told me about that, and I was like, that sounds like it would actually really fit, like exactly what I'm looking for. So I managed to finish 11th and 12th grade within I'd say a year,
Wow.
because I could get all my assignments done on my own time, and there were no long lectures about things that I didn't wasn't really interested in.
That's great. So you heard about the program
Mhm.
through, a friend. What did your mom or your stepdad say when you presented it to them?
So they were hesitant at first, as any parent probably would be, because they
Mhm.
assumed it was like a GED program, which I don't necessarily like the stigma behind those, but I guess it's understandable because they kind of have high expectations. But that's another conversation for a different time. But before that, so the friend that I was living with, he had also been having mental health issues. And he started going to a private school called the New School of Northern Virginia, which I tried for a day. And it had just been so long since being in a classroom that I was like, if I do this, I'm going to be miserable. So after that, it kind of came down to an ultimatum of you either do the new school or you find another option where you could still get a high school degree. And so luckily, this option came through and I managed to convince them. And yeah,
That's great. So did you personally have any concerns about the program at first, or when you looked at it, did it just seem like, what, this is going to be a good fit?
so I was confused at first, honestly, because I'd never heard of so I've done asynchronous classes before, but I've never done like an asynchronous school. So I also thought it would be like a GED thing, because not to say that it seemed easy per se, but it's just like there's so much unnecessary time, at least I feel unnecessary time cut out in the learning process, where it felt like the thing that I had been looking for that I needed to succeed had finally just kind of dropped right in front of me. So it was like kind of hard to believe at first. But
Almost like too good to be true.
yeah.
So, did you have any issues or struggles initially transitioning into this? I know you had said you had done asynchronous classes, but sometimes one asynchronous class is very different than doing an entire high school program this way. And I know sometimes pacing and trying to find the discipline to, sit down and not procrastinate gets in some people's way at first. Did you experience anything like that?
So I'm gonna be honest, it took me like a month where I didn't do any work at all. It took me that month to get myself going. Um, which I think what really helped was just like the satisfaction of being able, even if it's a small thing, like being able to cross off something on a list, like that little sense of accomplishment that you get was super helpful, and just kind of segmenting it, like, because I was really overwhelmed at first seeing how much I needed to do. But I think just like you don't need to complete like an entire class in a week with this program. You can, that's kind of when I realized like I can take all the time I need and still be just as successful as anyone else, just as long as I kind of pace myself. I will be perfectly fine. But it did take me a while to kind of get myself off the ground, because what I mainly struggle with, I can finish the work if I'm in it, but just that start is the most difficult part for me.
I can definitely relate to that feeling. I'm very similar with things sometimes. Once I get going, it's great, but it's
Yeah,
that initial push that it's like, okay, I have to really convince myself, like, you're going to do this now.
yeah.
Um, when it came time for needing, I mean, did you need any assistance with anything regarding your schoolwork? Like, did you ever have to talk to instructors if you didn't understand an assignment or you were just confused on some of the work or just, needed additional help?
The main thing was honestly, I'd say math. I used to really like math, but honestly, I think that's just because it was easy. Like, I wasn't, I guess, like, so when I was in middle school, there were three levels, I guess, or four technically. So there was the regular, just standard classes, there were honors, and then above that was AAP or AA. Which AAP I'm pretty sure is Advanced Academic Program. So that was something you kind of got screened for in elementary school. Um, so that's kind of when the procrastination started. Like when you realize that, or when you're told you're gifted, that's like, okay, I'm smart naturally. I don't need to try. And then when you get to high school, the playing field is quickly evened out. There's only regular and there's honors. So like doing algebra in eighth grade isn't the norm, but there were people even doing like geometry in eighth grade at my middle school. But then once you get to high school, it's like you are plunged into a pit of procrastination so quickly because you realize that I can't just skate by without studying for these tests.
Going back to your application, you mentioned in it that your experience with James Madison helped you to develop proper habits for success. Can you talk a little bit about what those habits are and how they formed?
It's overwhelming at first, but that's how life works.
Mm.
Um, like I'm working right now. I have a job at Tyson's Corner for this Dr. Seuss like attraction thing, which isn't like a corporate job necessarily, but it teaches you kind of like, well, there are, for example, if you're working an office job and you need a report, you're gonna need it by a certain day, but there's not gonna be like going to class at your job and having someone tell you, hey, reminder, this is due this day. The dates are pretty much more open ended, I feel like, which I don't think school necessarily does in the traditional sense prepares people for kind of the workplace, especially it's changing. The workplace I feel like especially since the pandemic, I think a lot of
Mhm.
employers are realizing that they can save time, money, and resources by employing their employees at home. But you also have to be responsible. Um, you can't. have like a poor work ethic and also manage to like stay at home and do all whatever you need to do from home because you need the proper mentality to succeed. So at least the way it prepared me was just that due date openness, but also just kind of no one's there to tell you that you need to do this, but it still needs to be done. So the only person you can kind of rely on in that scenario is yourself.
That is very, very true. So true, especially about the professional realm and just even in personal life. Once you hit adulthood and you're on your own, it is, you are responsible for everything. There is nobody, watching over your shoulder and keeping tabs on you.
Mm-hmm.
You also said in your application that you helped to take care of your grandfather who had come to the U.S. to help take care of you and your brother. Um, it's a really lovely cycle of how he took care of you and then you took care of him. But I also know, even in a personal sense, that is a lot to take on, especially at your age. And it's hard physically, it's hard mentally and emotionally, to care for somebody else, especially, like I said, at your age. But I just wanted to mention that because it is something that should be recognized and commended because, a lot of teenagers would find other things more interesting to do or what they would deem to be more interesting. And that's a big responsibility you took on. And then you also mentioned taking a gap year to learn more about topics that interested you, such as art and your African American heritage and your Ukrainian heritage. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences?
So I'll talk a little bit about my grandfather because he is
Yeah,
Ukrainian.
please.
So tie those together. So he came to the U.S. to live with me and my brother. Um, I don't refer to things by years. I just say what grade I was in. So I think 2019. Yeah, that's the year. So from 2019 to 2020, I lived in an apartment with him and my brother. He isn't like super. He's still capable. He can do things on his own, but also he could speak like a little bit of English, but he's very fluent in Ukrainian, which actually really helped me like to be able to speak because it's the only language he can speak. So I'm constantly speaking it. I can still kind of hold up a conversation nowadays, but not so much anymore. But while he was here, he had complications with his kidneys, so he had to be hospitalized. And there were definitely times where after school I'd have to get an Uber to the hospital and sit there with him. It's like, man, I'd rather be at home right now. But then there's also the moments when like me or my brother would need to call a nurse in because something bad is happening, and it's like, yes, I'd rather be at home, but I would also rather not my grandpa like die. So it's kind of like a balance, I guess. Like, because he also like spending a year away from his home country, away from his wife, also. Um, he probably didn't want to do that either, but he still did. But I wouldn't be able to stay in Virginia if he hadn't. So with that, it's definitely been difficult, especially with the war going on right now. Fortunately, he is okay. Him and my grandma, they're doing fine for now. And I hope it de escalates eventually. Really not a big fan, to put it very lightly. But then, so during the gap year, I say it kind of like with air quotes because I I wanted to go to college and I'm going right now, but I don't know. I guess it depends person to person. But so that those first few months, I kind of just was doing nothing, not really thinking about anything. Like I just graduated. I need my time to just do whatever I want because I deserve it. Um, but definitely a resource that I don't think enough people utilize is YouTube. Like I know a lot of people kind of think there's definitely a lot of like unprofessional, just silly, entertaining stuff, but there was especially a YouTube channel. I don't remember the name. FD Signifier. If anyone wants to check him out, he is a black creator, that made very interesting videos on like black patriarchy and how it harms both black men and black women, and just kind of like a whole realm of things that, even though I don't want to. I didn't grow up in a necessarily black household because I'm African American on my step or biological dad's side, but it's still something that I've been judged for, like because I'm very black presenting. Most people wouldn't assume I'm Ukrainian, at least in my personal experience. So it's kind of like there were a lot of resources that helped me understand that kind of aspect of myself that I never really understood. And then another thing was I tried getting into drawing. I couldn't really. I have a problem with a lot of my hobbies. With that, it's like if I'm not immediately good at it, I give up. I'm working on it, but there were a lot of things that I really wanted to do that I kind of got into. Like I wanted to make music, but I think more so, one of the arts I got into was especially music because I started like appreciating the music that I listened to and kind of like giving a more critical analysis to the music I listened to, which really helped me to enjoy it more honestly because I'm pretty varied when it comes to. I will pretty much listen to anything but country. I'll
I
be
have
honest.
some
No, no hate against country music, but that's like the one thing.
It's for some, it's not for others. It's okay. It's not
um,
for me either.
but then another thing I kind of got into was a lot of writing. I had a journals from my time when I was in residential, and those were just filled with like ideas I had and stories that I would write. So kind of expanding on my ideas and writing a lot more than I typically would, because especially on paper, like I think my ideas wouldn't flow as well as they do on my computer if I hadn't spent so much time. Like
I can relate to that so much. I was the same way around your age.
the
I would be the
paper
only person who would
foundation,
handwrite
yeah.
everything instead of on a computer because it just, I don't know, it flowed more easily.
Like the paper foundation I think was really important to build on because it's kind of like I could type a sentence so much faster than I could write it, but then that time I'm writing it, I'm reading it and visualizing what I see, and I can improve my writing even more and kind of think of more ideas on where to take this because I tend to improvise a lot and it typically works. I'm not saying I don't plan things, but when it comes to my writing, I tend to just kind of put pen to paper and see where that takes me. Um, which I don't know. I guess like sometimes I just have like the idea part of my brain. I can't turn it off. It just keeps going and going. But along with writing, I kind of started to more carefully analyze like certain media I was into. Um, just kind of like a few shows that I'm trying to think. What's the word for it? I'm blanking on it. Oh, anime. Yes, I
Mhm.
a lot of teens my age, especially me, super into anime. Um, but at least I think personally, older generations like not to say that it's not like they don't get it, but I think that when you like give it a chance, it's just kind of like another form to kind of convey media.
You also mentioned college a little
Hmm.
earlier. Have you started or are you in the application process?
So I am actually I have a class later today,
Oh,
but I am taking two classes for the summer quarter at Nova. Um, the second class is starting on the 30th. That's just an English college composition. But the class right now is a biomedical ethics course.
wow, that must be fascinating.
It's really, really cool.
Any idea of what you'd like to major in or, focus on for your studies, or are you just kind of sampling some of the courses that are out there to make a decision?
Um, to be honest, it's definitely the latter. I am completely clueless as to what I want to major in. Um, I guess for now, the only thing I have in mind is liberal arts. That's kind of just a general degree. Um,
Mhm.
but I used to stress about it a lot, but hearing a lot of people say, like, I didn't decide my major until I was halfway through, like, the first one I picked, it's kind of, I have time, I feel like. There's definitely,
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people end up changing their
yeah,
majors, and someone once told me, you know what, don't even bother declaring until the second
yeah.
semester of like your sophomore year, which, hey, that works for some people it doesn't. But I mean, there are plenty of prerequisites and, core curriculum that you have to undertake
Yeah,
first. So, you have time.
yeah.
So, what has been the most rewarding or valuable part about your James Madison experience?
I think, at least now, I'm in a much better place than I was when I first started at James Madison. Um, like, back then, I would wake up at like 4 p.m. every day and go to bed at like 3 a.m., just kind of cruising along, I guess, which is can be a good attitude sometimes, but it's like you can't cruise forever. You have to get initiative. You have to start somewhere. And James Madison was that somewhere to start for me. So now, since moving, I mean, I have a job, I'm going to college, I have a pretty decent sleep schedule, and I even started working out again every morning. So I feel like just that kind of an experience with school that I hadn't had was it feeling like it will benefit me, like ever. And while there's a point to be made for the curriculum, maybe some information I won't need in the future, but the skills I learned in how to manage my workload and manage my motivation is something that I don't think I could have done without a program like this.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear, and I'm glad that we were able to make that impact on your life.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story and your insights on James Madison.
you're welcome.